Welcome to Reading the Gospels Together, and today we're at the second part of our introduction to the Gospel of John. Now, while John contains many of the same events of the Synoptic Gospels, what John really wants to do is to supplement them with more theological material. The birth of Jesus, for instance, is expressed in theological rather than historical language, using philosophical terms current in John's day. While the other Gospels have lots of parables, John doesn't. Instead, Jesus has many lengthy speeches in John, including his conflicts with the Pharisees and the temple authorities and synagogue rulers, conflicts which had reached a head during John's day. Now, while in his later life John was based in Ephesus, he's nevertheless very familiar with Jerusalem. In fact, we're told in the Gospel of John that he was known to the high priest. That's how Peter got into that courtyard when Jesus had been arrested. And John's descriptions and details of Jerusalem are validated again and again through modern-day archaeological finds. The pools of Siloam and Bethesda, for instance, were well known because of John long before they were rediscovered and affirmed by archaeologists, down to the smallest detail. Now, thanks to John, we have events central to our understanding of Jesus which are not in the other Gospels. Alone in John, we have the changing water into wine at Cana, Jesus' discussions with Nicodemus, Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well, Jesus washing the disciples' feet, the raising of Lazarus, the interview with Pilate, the resurrection encounter with Mary Magdalene, the appearance to doubting Thomas, the appointment of Peter as first among the disciples, and other events. There are also the I am titles of Jesus, which we're so used to hearing. But they're unique to John. When Jesus says, I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world, I am the door, I am the good shepherd, I am the resurrection and the life, I am the way, the truth, and the life, I am the true vine. All of that we find only in John. Now, those who organized John's accounts of Jesus into the gospel we have today were less concerned with chronology, with what happened in what order, than they were with building a portrait of Jesus through a series of miracles, which they call the 7 signs, which reveal the divinity of Jesus and his role as Messiah and his power over death itself. We'll encounter these signs together. They are changing water into wine at Cana, healing the royal official's son in Capernaum in John chapter 4, healing the paralytic at Bethesda in John chapter 5, feeding the 5,000 in John chapter 6, Jesus walking on the water again in John chapter 6, healing the man born blind from birth in John 9, and the raising of Lazarus in John 11. Each one of these is accompanied by a statement that this was a further sign. The gospel is trying to be as clear as possible, letting us know just who Jesus is and how all he said and did points to his true identity as the Messiah, the very Son of God. But some of John is pretty hard going as well. And part of the problem is language. Now, John was written in Greek, which was the primary language of the world around the Mediterranean, in much the same way that English is the language most widely understood in our world today. Well, no problem. We can translate ancient Greek into English just as we do with the rest of the New Testament. Modern translations help keep that process up to date. But Greek isn't only a language. Greek is a culture. It's an entire world of understanding, quite different from the way that we view how the world works today. Now, that's harder to translate, even more so in John than in the other Gospels. And we run into this very different worldview right off the bat with the first introductory verses in the Gospel of John. I'm going to read these for you in the New Living Translation, a very good modern translation. John writes this: In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. Now, John begins his gospel not with a genealogy like Matthew does, not like saying who he is and explaining his method like Luke does, but John begins with a theological statement written in philosophical Greek. That makes it a kind of a tough start for us. Now, we need to remember that in our day and age, we speak in psychological terms. We talk about being depressed or anxious, or we describe somebody as a narcissist or something. Now, in the 1600s to 1800s, no one ever would have talked that way. And they wouldn't have understood what you meant by it. They talked about bodily humors, for instance, and whether someone was sanguine or phlegmatic or choleric. And we wouldn't understand that today. In John's Greek-speaking world of Western Turkey, he was based in the major city of Ephesus during the writing of this gospel. At that time, the city had a population of about 250,000. People spoke and thought in terms of Greek philosophical concepts, which described their understanding of how the world worked. And a central idea of that was the concept of the logos, which in English we translate as word. So what is this logos? What is this word? Stick with me for a minute, because this is going to impact the way we read the whole Gospel of John. So be patient. In the understanding of the day, particularly those educated in Greek thought, like John's audience, the word or the logos was the truth or the pattern or the ideal behind all things. For instance, when we look at a dog, we identify it as a dog, no matter if it's a toy poodle or a beagle or a Great Dane. The smallest child will do that, no matter how different dogs look. We call them all dogs. Here's the two guys right here, Herschel and Wolfie. Pretty different creatures, really. Wolfie looks more like a cat than a dog at times, but we know they're dogs, and we automatically call them dogs. The smallest child to do that. Now, how or why? To explain this, the Greeks taught that there was within everybody the knowledge of a perfect dog, the logos of a dog, the primary pattern of dog, out of which all other dogs arise. The logos of dog is the true dog. All other dogs are imperfect reflections of the logos dog. In fact, all of reality is an imperfect reflection of the heavenly logos behind all of reality. The way that we perceive reality is, as the apostle says, through a dim or distorted reflection. It is the logos which is real. Now, to be a little more clear, the Greek philosopher Plato explained it in this way. It's as though humanity is living in a dark cave. Our backs are to the entrance of the cave. Now, a creature walks by the mouth of the cave. Say it's a horse. We don't see the horse because our backs are to the door of the cave. What we see is the shadow of the horse passing by on the wall of the cave. The real horse is the logos of the horse. The shadow of the horse is the distorted reality which we perceive. Now, Plato says all of human existence works this way. Not only objects, but emotions. Love, for instance. There's true love, and then there are the distorted forms of love, such as lust or greed or obsession or jealousy. The goal of philosophy and of life is to seek the true form of things and not the distortions. Again, stick with me on this. It may seem obscure, but it's going to pay off. So when John wrote that in the beginning the Logos already existed and that everything was created through that Logos, everyone would have said, yes, we know that. There's this pattern out of which everything else was created, this original form. And then John continues, the light shines in the darkness and the darkness cannot overcome it. Now, light versus darkness is a main theme throughout John. Watch for it in every chapter of the book and in John's letters. Light equals life and truth and ultimately Jesus, that true reality outside the cave. Dark equals death and falsehood. Remember that dark cave and how all we see are shadows? But now, says John, here comes the light. Back to John. God sent a man, John the Baptist, to tell about the light, here it comes, so that everyone might believe because of his testimony. John himself was not the light. He was simply a witness to tell about the light. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He came into the very world he created, but the world didn't recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. So John the Baptist's job is to say, hey, everybody, stop looking this way, look that way. Here comes the light. So into the darkness of our cave comes the source of light, of true reality. But many who are so used to seeing only shadows are blinded by the light. They don't recognize the truth. But then we read, but to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. They're reborn, not with physical birth resulting from human passion or plan, but from a birth which comes from God. When we follow Jesus, he leads us out of that dark cave and out into the light of reality. We are reborn into the truth, into the light of eternity. It's like being born again. And now the big reveal. So, the Word became flesh and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness. And we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. Now this for John is the big reveal. The Word, the Logos, the organizing principle and creative force behind all things, becomes flesh and makes his home among us. Not just a shadow, the real thing in all of his glory. When we see Jesus, we finally see an undistorted and undimmed reflection of the true God and the true life as well. Got it? Good. Now, when John talks about being in darkness and coming to the light, or about being blind and now seeing, or what true love, the love which comes from God, really means, or about being born again, you'll know exactly what he's getting at. This tension between reality and the light, and the illusion and the darkness of our distorted world. Now, in our world, which is filled with fake news and relative truth, it often seems like we're right back in that dark and shadowy cave. But Jesus in the Gospel of John is bringing us back into the light, just like with Lazarus, just like that. Now, that's what those puzzling first 18 verses or so of John are all about. They're setting the stage for the gospel which is to come. Now, armed with this new understanding, we can now tackle the text and meet Jesus together. And we'll do that next time with the rest of John chapter 1. We've got the technical stuff out of the way, and now we can get into the scriptures. We'll see you then.